Welcome to another weekly featured business brought to you by Visibility Impact and your host, James Moffat, where he will gracefully take our featured guest on a personal and business journey and stories that will inspire, educate, and engage you.
Okay, so welcome to another Friday featured business brought to you by Visibility Impact and your host, myself, James Moffat. Today, we've got our special 100th guest. Believe it or not, we've been around a while. So 100th guest. So welcome, Robby Collins.
Thank you, James.
Right, we're gonna take Robby through a story from his childhood to where he is now, where he's from, any memorable moments he wants to share with us, and what he's actually doing now. So anyone that is watching the recording now, so feel free to connect. We'll provide the details and everything on how to connect with Robby afterwards, and they'll be kind of in the show notes that you can follow. So Robby, without further ado, we normally kick this off with 𝗬𝗢𝗨𝗪, but unfortunately she can't make it today. But I'm sure because you live in Switzerland, I live in Switzerland, and she's here, then we'll get an opportunity to actually see her live because she does lots of gigs as well. But Robby, so Tell us a little bit about you. So where are you living now and where are you from?
So right now I live in the Swiss Alps in a village called Morgins, which is in the 𝗘𝗘𝗏𝗧 ski region, which is I'm gonna just say it's the biggest ski domain in the world. I don't know if that's true, but it's close to. It's one of the top three easily. I say it's the biggest. And I've been here since in Switzerland since 2008, and I was born in Kansas, and spent the first 20 years of my life in Kansas trying to grow up and become an adult, and decided that Kansas was definitely not the place for me. So I packed up and moved to Arizona and went through my studies there, and found my way into a big multinational aerospace company that eventually moved me out to Switzerland. So my connection to the Swiss Alps is through Phoenix, Arizona.
All right. So
I have friends in Phoenix, Arizona.
Hello, yeah. I have family.
So welcome, Boyan. Boyan has been a previous guest, and he's normally always in the audience. So welcome, Boyan, as well here. So we also
James, you didn't shave too much as well, but it's weird in a good dress code, beard code.
Yeah. So yeah, and Gordon is here. So Gordon's first time as well. So
Hi,
so welcome.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Yeah. So we'll catch up with each other as well another time. So just taking Robby through his journey. So you came again in 2008 to Switzerland.
Yeah, 2008. So I used to, it's hard to explain what I used to do. I used to be we'll say an internal consultant for a multinational, and our job was to change the culture of a company, 122,000 employee company. Wow. Which wanted to change the culture for we'll say PR reasons, not for performance reasons. So long story short, it didn't work, but they're still trying. So I guess we can't say it didn't work. I gave up because yeah, when they brought me over, it was to complete a team of people we worked with. I had an organizational psychologist as a colleague, and we started out working in factories all over Europe. and we, after about a year and a half of effort, we realized that the root of the problem, the root of the change, resistance to change, was not at the bottom of the hierarchy, it was at the top. So we started doing some work a little bit higher up, and learned real quick that that wasn't going to happen. And so we all kind of slowly parted, and now we all do other things. But I think what I loved about that job was the being able to work with people in all levels of the company, we'll say. That's what I liked. And what I didn't like was that there were people in all levels of the company, and I'm not a big fan of traditional bottom-down, top-down management. And I think it's more of a hindrance than anything. And I've got proof. I've got 15 years of proof that it's more of a hindrance than anything else. I did really enjoy working with the people closest to the customer, the ones actually making the products, the ones actually with the important skills for the company. I just was slightly disappointed that those people were underappreciated, and the people who had less, we'll say, skills that contributed to the product were the most rewarded.
But did you travel a lot also with the job?
Yeah, so that's kind of how I started. With my wife, we wanted to start another company because in 2011 we moved to Morgins in December with lots of snow, and my son was 9 months old. And in 2012 I traveled. I counted. I flew 100 times in 2012. Wow. So I was 40 weeks out of 52 away for work. I had 6 weeks holiday. So do the math. I wasn't in Switzerland very often, and I was always in the airports, and sometimes in 2-3 countries per week. And at the end of that year, where I mean, we did so much. Made so much progress on what we were doing. Obviously, the work that we were doing took time to get results, and whenever results take time, that frustrates a lot of the upper management. So I had a horrible performance review after probably the hardest corporate year of my life, because there were no results. And so what I did was, in 2013, my wife and I started our business plan for opening up the brewery, and I cut my, we'll say, energy level that I put into my current job in half. And I traveled half as much, I worked half as much, I cared half as much. And at the end of 2013, I got a wonderful bonus because my results for 2012 came through. And so I continued. I said, well, you know what I'll do is, since I cut my effort in half and I got a big bonus, what I'm going to do is I'll cut it in half again and see what happens. And big surprise, I cut it in half again in 2014. And same thing happened, big bonus and all that. And in 2015, I said, well, I'm not gonna push it. I'll just quit. And I quit. And at that point in time, we had our brewery run a small brewery running for about 18 months. And I was doing conference calls and brewing for about the last 6 months. And when I quit, nobody knew I was upset, disgruntled, frustrated with my work, and nobody had any idea that I even wanted to quit. And all of that, and in 3 years' time, they went from getting more than 100% of my energy to almost none, and didn't even know it.
Wow.
So that's when the word sustainability to me started to kind of pop around, is because that is absolutely not sustainable. You can't pay somebody. I mean, the salary I had, the company car, and I was on expenses, so I was spending 12 to 15,000 a month just on travel. All of that for basically nothing other than just passing emails and making sure that the right words are being said and the right behaviors are are becoming present. It's just, for me, that absolutely not sustainable. So now the company that I worked for is a company of 40,000 employees. They sold off two of the three, or three of the four, and what's left is the cash cow. That it's an aerospace company, so that believes very much in traditional turbine technology. So we'll see if they're here in 20 years' time. I'll bet money that they won't be here, but yeah. So that basically we walked away. I walked away from all that with the idea that there's a way to do things sustainably, and it has to involve people. Obviously, profit needs to be there to pay the bills, but the people have to be in the middle of it all. Otherwise, there's no possibility for a sustainable way of living or working.
So let me just jump in and ask you a few questions there. So you were living, when you were employed in this job, you were living in Kansas at the time?
No, actually, I was in Arizona because I had left Kansas when I was 20 years old.
All right, okay.
I did my university studies at Arizona State, and then traveled, or I lived a while in California as well, and then in 2005, I think it was 2004, I started working for this multinational, and they moved me out in 2008 from Arizona.
Right, and to come to Switzerland, that was all part of kind of a relocation?
So I was so desperate to leave. It kind of leads on to a discussion we had before the recording started, is I just didn't feel like I fit in the US anymore. Do I fit here? That's another question, but I didn't feel that I fit in the US anymore. And I wanted to get out, and I paid my own relocation to Switzerland because I was just so desperate to get away.
So you mentioned you're married. So your wife is from the US?
No, actually, well, I was married before to an American, Italian-American in the US, and we separated. So she came to Europe as well, and we separated, we'll say, in transition. But my wife is Swiss, and we met at work in my old job. She worked in the same company.
Okay, so doing what you're doing now was kind of, I mean, you were married and you were discussing that between you. I mean, how did that come about?
Well, so she, in order to move to Morgins, she had to quit her job, because it's a little over an hour drive from here to the office, and she had to be there every day, and I just had to get to Geneva airport. So for me, it was all right to live pretty much anywhere in Switzerland. But she had to quit her job in order for us to move to Morgins. And our son was born in March, so he was just a small, not even walking when we moved to Morgins. And so she took time off to take care of him, and she was a ski instructor as well, so she gave a couple ski lessons to start out. And then when 2012, I had my horrible review. That's when she said, well, I'd like to start contributing again and going back to work and doing something. And so that's when we said, well, why not start something ourselves? Instead of going and finding a job, why don't we start something ourselves? And we'd even had thought about at one point doing a bed and breakfast here in Morgins, but we gave that one up real quick. It's lots of work for not much.
Exactly. My mum always said that she'll start a bed and breakfast, and I thought, look at all the hassle and the work that you have to do.
Well, you have to let people live on your couch.
Exactly. So I mean, that was before the Airbnb days as well. So So you decided that you're going to sit down and kind of brainstorm this and think of ideas, what you could do as a business.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, was there kind of that light bulb moment that you thought, wow, a brewery, or who thought of that, and how did that come into kind of the equation?
Well, I had been harassing her for a couple years already about a brewery because I was at that, in 2012, when I was always on the road, it was between the UK, Czech Republic, and Germany, mostly. And so in the UK, there's a huge beer culture. In Germany as well, and in the Czech Republic. And then when I'd come back to Switzerland, it was just standard industrial yellow liquid. So there were craft breweries around, but you just had to go so far and dig to find them, that I said, well, there's got to be a possibility there. And when we started our brewery, there were 622 craft breweries in Switzerland.
Wow.
We're the 623rd.
Today,
and
you still thought that this strong competition, yeah, let's do it.
Well, actually, it's strange to think that there was strong competition because you couldn't find it anywhere. I mean, I never found these craft breweries until I started really digging into the Swiss breweries, craft breweries, and then going and finding them. It's not like you go to the UK and you change the village and you change the pub, you change the beer, and Czech Republic, Germany, it's the same thing. And it's just normal that when you go to Mainz, you drink the beer that's brewed in Mainz. And here it's like nobody even knows that all the beer they drink is Carlsberg. They don't even know it. They think it's a Swiss brewery, but it's not, so it's like the culture didn't exist. So we didn't even see that as a risk at the time. And even today, there are over 1,500 breweries in Switzerland.
Wow.
But if you count the number that actually live from it, like 100%, there's not even 150 in all of Switzerland. So the 1,400 and whatever that are left over, they brew and they sell like a couple boxes a week to their friends who have a bar, and it's more just for fun or with the prestige to say that you're a brewery than to live. And so there are very few breweries that actually live off of it. What we're seeing now is
are these called the kind of the micro breweries?
Yeah, so
or is there a special name for them?
Yeah, so our first brewery, we had a capacity to do 40,000 liters per year.
Wow.
And that's you can't live off that. It's not a sustainable business. I mean, if you're alone and you manage to do all that by yourself, it's 7 days work per week. And you'll, at the end of the month, you'll be able to like sort out maybe 4,000 Swiss franc salary, maybe. It's so small, you can't count on that as like a regular full-time job. So you've got to be quite a bit larger than that, which means you need to invest, which means that cuts out 90% of the brewers in Switzerland, because they want to be big enough to be able to make beer for themselves and maybe a couple customers, but have no ambitions to actually live off of it. The majority, but very few. So about 150 of us, we'll say maybe even 200, but I would doubt that it's 200. 150 of us, that's all we do, and it's how we live. So
So just out of curiosity, how many beers would you need to sell per week or month or year to have this as a sustainable business?
So I think that I've heard that you have to do 1,000 liters a week per employee to be to be able to turn, to be able to function. I think in
Be
Switzerland
over
that
the
might.
break even. Enough.
Sorry.
To be enough above the break even to live with it.
Yeah. So I think 1,000 would be above the break even. So the break even would be quite maybe 2/3 of that. But in Switzerland, it's even different because yeah, okay, it's expensive to live in Switzerland, but at the same time,
You can sell it more
yeah,
expensive as well.
yeah. So I don't think, yeah, I don't think it's 1,000. I think it's probably maybe 600 to 800. The break even might be 600, and 800 would be, we'll say, profitable. And then you can always play other games like the one we have, which is really nice, is we have a bar in the brewery. So you know, we would sell a keg to a customer at a bar, and it'd be, we'll say, between 4 and 7 Swiss francs per liter.
So I heard you invite us for a drink at least.
Yeah, come on over anytime.
and so you have to kind of diversify in a way. It's not just about
yeah,
selling the beer,
yeah,
it's selling kind of merchandise, selling other things that wrap around it.
yeah. Well, so what we like to, well, what I think we do well is we cultivate our community. So we try to we know it's really hard to communicate to our consumers via the bars and restaurants that buy our products, because there's a person in between us, and we count on them to say and do the right things. And sometimes, most times it works, sometimes it doesn't. But our community, you know, on Facebook and Instagram, we never ever paid to have likes and to promote our community. Yeah, it's all organic, so they're very reactive and they're very engaged, and so we're proud of that. So we work really hard to communicate to them in the way that they want to be communicated, and we also try to sell a maximum of what we make directly to them. I mean, it's not even 20% of what we make in a year.
I was going to ask. How you sell?
Yeah.
You sell directly to the consumers, so through distributors. How
yeah, we don't distribute. We don't work with distributors. We have one in the local area because it's a local guy, and he's a friend. So he buys and sells a little bit of our beer, but I'd say 98% of what we make, we distribute ourselves. We also export into France, and we have a French Seven Peaks France in 𝗪𝗡𝗪, which is next to the village next to us. So France, by the way, is a 3-minute drive from the brewery. We're right on the border. And yeah, so we export our own beer to our company in France, and then we distribute ourselves from our company in France. I mean, we can talk afterwards on why we do it that way, because it seems complicated, but just in a nutshell, the simple answer to that is, again, to go against the system that exists today, but mostly I would rather pay somebody to be an advocate for Seven Peaks and to deliver the beer and to have a smile on their face and to, we'll say, guarantee a top customer contact, than to give 20 to 30% of my margins away to a distributor that's going to sell 300 other types of beer on the same day, and they don't have any motivation to put more energy into our beer than any other beer. And then, so the downside to that is we're blocked out of many places, because if you, certain bars and restaurants, this typical way of working in Switzerland is a distributor buys their place in your establishment, and then you sell whatever they deliver, but you can't sell anything else. So you get blocked out of certain things. But for us, we decided that it's more important to keep the control over the contact with our customers than to, we'll say, sell more for less.
Okay. So I want to come back more to kind of where you are now in the business, and also how you started. What was the first beer that you produced? Because you have a range of beers now, but we'll come to that in a minute. I just want to kind of take you back a little bit. So you grew up, I mean, just a little bit on your childhood and some memorable experiences. So you shared some exciting parts of the journey, and with me anyway, so I've seen them, and I think they're great to share with others. So you went on kind of a mountain challenge, or you were out in the mountains in Colorado, and if you could share that story with you, I think this would be good, because this is also, I think, more a bit about you now, although the brewery is as well, but I mean, this is a bit about a personal journey. Yeah,
well, I think so that example that I shared with you is, I'd say, like, I think you called it a marking point, a memorable moment, and maybe there are many in our life. Well, hopefully there are many, but this one, I think, is the first point where, in my life, where I basically decided who was responsible for my success. I don't know if that makes sense, but basically we're in the mountains, and it was Colorado Outward Bound. Take care, Corinne. Colorado Outward Bound School it was a 3-week program where they called it leadership mountaineering. So basically they you have to be physically fit to do it. I mean, it's very, very challenging, but they put you in groups of, well, in our case, it was similar aged. I was 23, 24 at the time. And it's in 3 groups. The first week they teach you how to read maps, they teach you how to navigate in the mountains, they teach you about weather, they teach you about leave no trace, mountain camping philosophy, and that's the first week. So the second week, they let the groups auto manage the second week of adventure, but it's supervised. And the third one is the third week is you just go off and do what you get to choose your group, and then you either go climb a really technical mountain, or you just walk through the forest. You get to choose. And in the second week, there was we were going over a pass, and there was weather. In the mountains, every day it rains, so there was a storm coming through, and we got up a bit late, so we were caught on the top of this pass when the storm hit. And so, I mean, the hair on your arms was standing up, and I mean, you could feel the electricity in there, and the lightning was striking all around, and the guides were panicked. And
the guides were panicking.
The guides were panicking. They were stressed. We'll say it that way. They weren't panicking. They were getting out the cable, the cords, and we all had to put on our harnesses, and we had to basically climb down a snowbank to get out of the middle of the clouds, basically. And so part of this program is that everybody gets their chance to lead. So every day, everybody takes the map and they navigate. And so everybody, we get to see all of, we'll say, the leadership styles or the hurdles, and we all get to try. And this particular day, I don't know who was in charge, but when we were at the top, it was basically crisis mode, and we had to get down quick. And there were a couple of people panicking, like frozen, unable to move. And the guides they looked at me and they're like, you have to make the steps. You have to do all the make the trail down so that everybody can get down. So I hooked up to my rope. I made the steps down, and I was the first one down, and then everybody else came down. One girl fell and had to take her backpack off, and they had to come down and help her get down. And anyways, nothing happened. I mean, it all ended on a positive note, we'll say. But I think what I learned there was, it's when things are going well, you know, I'm a follower, or I contribute in a way that I'd say is complementary to whoever's in charge, we'll say. But when things don't go the way they are, that's where I kind of manage to stick out, maybe. That's
I mean, taking responsibility of a group, you mentioned that it was around 10 or so of you, and to kind of lead that pack in undaunting territory in a way that you don't know what to expect either, and you are now in a way responsible for the others that are there because you're leading the way. You've got to find that kind of safe route, and they've got to follow you. And particularly that you mentioned that some are in panic mode, and I guess even the guides, because the guides didn't necessarily want that responsibility either, and you're caught out by the weather. And now, in a way that, as you mentioned, it's a finding of yourself, because you have to believe in your own abilities, that you can not just take the lead, but you can do it in a safe way that others are going to have to follow whatever you tell them to do. And I think in life, I mean, there's many kind of turning points and many examples of where you have to step up, and it's not necessarily proven to yourself. It's about finding yourself and knowing that you have got that capability to do something. You just didn't know that you had it before.
Yeah, and I think so. I learned that day that's maybe one of my strengths, and over time I realized that, you know, when I worked for the big multinational, when things, so there were moments where factories were in big trouble, and they needed help, and nothing was working, and I found that that's when, quite often, that's when they called me to go in and help. And what I find interesting is, it's not like, you know, like even on the mountain, making the steps for everyone to go down, it's not incredibly technical or complicated. It just had to be done. And when you go in, I would go into these factories that were, we'll say, falling apart. There was never, you know, I have a master's degree in industrial engineering, and never in my 15 years in that company did I ever push the limits of my education. All of the solutions were so straightforward and simple, but always based on the human side of things. So when the things really started falling apart, it wasn't like some big technical problem that was really hard to understand. It was just basically realigning what needed to be done with the hands that were there to do it, and then trust them to get it done. And that every time that we went into these factories, all the resets that we would do were nothing more than just, okay, stop, sit down. What do we need to do? Okay, let's go do it. And then it's done. Instead of going in and telling them what to do, we went in and asked them what to do. And I think that's the experience that I'd had in the past of going into a situation having absolutely no idea how you're going to get out of it, or what you need even to get started. I think that helped me a lot in going into these other and being successful in these other experiences, where I could go into something not knowing anything about the factory or the products or the people or anything, and in a day's time walk away with some progress, because it's just a matter of listening and then distilling out the things that weren't being done in the past and putting them on the table and getting them moving forward. And I think that experience helped me to have confidence to trust the simple things and not think that it's just overlooked because it must be so complicated. But no, it's actually simple.
I actually love that, because you're bringing back the human touch. I think particularly now we're so fixated with technology and AI that we forget to be human. And sometimes we need to direct the way that we are back to the human element, because a lot of the time it's the human interaction that solves the problems, not necessarily technology. I'm not saying that you can't not have technology, but there has to be the human element to that as well. And we try to forget that, and we think technology is going to solve everything. Yeah. So, I mean, I love your philosophy on life. So just growing up as a kid then, did you ever see yourself as an entrepreneur? What was it that, or a business person and starting your own business? Or what were your aspirations as a child?
So my father is an architect, and he was self-employed. He had his own practice since I was born. So I never saw anything, never knew anything other than that from my family life. I'll say my grandfather was a farmer, and that's the most entrepreneurial job you could ever have is to be a farmer. And he did many other things as well. He was also an air conditioner repairman and the mayor of his town, and he did everything. So I grew up around, we'll say, these kinds of people who, I never had a 9-to-5. I never worked for another company, and so I say that it was just something I decided I had to do from a young age? I don't know, but I do know that I always in my mind said that someday I'll do something for me, not for others. In terms of a company, I don't want to run a company for other people. I want to run a company for me, and I want to do something that I think is right and make something with my own hands. So that's something that always kind of kicked around in the back of my head, but never in a million years would I have thought when I was a kid that I was gonna make beer in the Swiss Alps. I mean, I knew I'd live in the mountains one day. That's something I knew I would do. But
so, for your schooling, I mean, did you have a particular study that you did? Was it something that you wanted to do, or kind of was steered into that, or? And then from that study, are you doing something related to that now?
So I was, well, my father was, when I was the age of my son, so about 11 years old, my father was, for some reason, building factories, designing factories that made tractors and things like that. And I would go around with him in the summer and visit the factories, and we'd get in the golf cart and drive through the factory, and I'd get to see these production lines making tractors. And I always liked going into factories. So that's something my dad told me when I was 11, about that age. He's like, well, if you like this, you should be an industrial engineer, because those are the people who make these things, make the factories. They don't make the tractor, they make the factory that makes the tractor. And so that's what got me started in industrial engineering. Then I changed to architecture because I wanted to take over my father's business. And then I changed back to industrial engineering because, I don't really like drawing. And back then there was no AutoCAD. It was all hand drawing. So, I think didn't have a passion to be an industrial engineer. I don't think any industrial engineer ever has a passion to be an industrial engineer. I think you go, when you get into school and you start studying it, the concepts or the subjects are extremely interesting and important. But I don't think when you're 10 years old, somebody tells you that you're going to do production simulation or linear programming or optimization work and love it. So I just, luckily, as I went further into my studies, I started liking it more and more. But I was pushed definitely into that direction.
But if you think now what you're doing with the brewery, the kind of the foundation and the background in doing that, I mean, you talk about your father like building the factories, you've kind of built, in a way, your factory. I mean, it's your brewery. So it's kind of like an engineering program or project that you had to build. And I'm just curious, because starting a brewery, I mean, I've heard of people that have done these microbreweries, and they've kind of done it in their basement or something. But then I've taken a look at your website, and I've seen kind of the equipment and stuff that you've got. I mean, it's huge. I mean, how do you go about starting that? I mean, when you came on the idea, just coming back now to your business, and when you came to that idea, how did you think that, well, we're going to need a massive amount of things? Or do you just think, oh, we just need to, where are we going to get the bottles from? What's the water supply and the ingredients that we need to make beer? Or did you see it on this kind of grander scale that if you're going to do it properly, then you need to invest in the right equipment?
Yeah. Well, we started small. So the first system that we bought, it was a 400-liter system, very simple. We started with that, and I was brewing 400 liters while I was on the weekends, while I was traveling during the week. And that the first 18 months with that brewery, I brewed 368 times. So 368 batches. And before I started brewing on that system, I'd brewed maybe 3 times in my whole life. So I learned to brew on a small system, but big enough to, that's something I learned from my father too. He loves to cook, and he always says that you're better off making big batches of stuff, because if you get the spices wrong, it's easier to correct. So in brewing, brewing a little 20-liter thing at home was so hard. But then when the 400-liter system came along, it got just so much easier, because you have pumps to move stuff around and all that, but the percentages, you're not talking grams in percentages, it's kilos, and 5% more is 5 kilos, it's not 5 grams. So you have the margin for error is greater, and you can learn more and take more risks without just throwing it away in the end. So we started small, and after that experience, there were things that we learned that we absolutely had to have, which is a bottling line that was as fast as we could possibly afford, because that's just horrible work that no human should have to be forced to do that every day of their life. So we try to bottle 1 day per week, because it's the most mindless, frustrating job ever. So we try to do it as little as possible. So that's something we learned by doing by hand. And I have problems with my arm now because of the manual capper.
But in doing that, do you kind of, I mean, there's a team of you, we'll come on to that in a minute, but you don't play music or something to get yourself kind of in the mood? So, you're doing something repetitive, but you can be singing or playing music at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, we do play music, and if we do a long bottling run, it's 5 hours, and it's just, your mind can wander. So it's not horrible work in small doses. I mean, it's definitely manageable in one or maybe 2 days per week. But there are breweries there are people that all they do is that all day, every day. And for me, it's not interesting. But you can turn on the music and you can kind of escape and evade the repetitive part of the work. But I think what I find more interesting is watching people learn and think. So in bottling, you're basically just you're participating in mechanical work. It's not. It's if you've done it once, you know exactly how to do it. So
well, maybe you should do kind of an open day where you get students to come and say, you can come and have a look, but you have part of that, you have to do the bottling, and then you get some students doing the bottling for you. I don't know, just thinking of like, come and see the brewery, and then you can have a drink, but you have to do some bottling. Right. But anyway, so just tell me, I mean, I'm going to ask you, bombard you with a few questions now, because I don't want to keep you all day here. And yeah, it's a topic and a subject, I mean, I love, and I personally want to know more. And I definitely want to come and visit you up in the mountains there, which is not too far from me. And I'll bring in the kids as well, so they can do some bottling. Right.
We have popcorn too.
Sorry?
We have popcorn too.
Yeah.
A popcorn machine.
All right. Okay. So 7 Peaks. So how did you come up with that name?
So my wife decided that if we're going to start a company, it has to have something to do with the Dents du Midi, which is a mountain region just next, in our area, which she tells everyone they're the most beautiful mountains in the world. So for her, it had to have something to do with those mountains. And there are 7 peaks on the Dents du Midi. Each of them have a name, and all of our beers, we have 7 regular beers, and each of them have a name of one of the summits of those 7 peaks. So that's where the name came from. Why is it French? It's 7 Peaks Brasserie, and it's because I mean, that's our life. I'm American, born in the US. My wife is Swiss, so we have a mix of French and English in our daily life. So that's part of why it's a mixed English/French name. And we try and keep that mix all along. I mean, our style, most of our beer styles are pretty heavily American styles, which is basically the way craft beers are going today.
Right.
Anyways.
So how many beers do you have now?
So, well, we have the 7 beers all year round, and then we have, at the moment, we have 4 additional beers.
These are kind of specials.
Yeah, we do throughout the year. We try to have at least 2 specials at any given moment. And
so they're like seasonal specials or something.
Yeah, just one shot type of beers. We do a beer with basil, and we do that one in summer.
Okay.
So we're not doing that one anymore. And then we do a winter beer, but it's not a dark beer. It's actually a wheat beer. So it's like a fruity style wheat beer. And it's kind of a beer, a tribute to snow. So
yeah. So before you started, I mean, did you know anything about beers besides drinking them?
Actually, my first beer course I took in Sunderland in the UK.
All right.
And I brought my whole family there for a wonderful, I think it was even in October, so it was really like raining cold, horrible weather. And it was called Startup Brewing, and it was a 1-week-long course that basically told you the basics of everything that there has to do with brewing, but in an hour, per subject. So it's very, very basic. And I remember the guy, another guy that was in the class, he's like, so what kind of beer are you going to brew? Are you going to brew ale or lager? And I remember looking at him and I'm like, I said, I don't know. Yeah, I think, ales. And it's like, in my mind, I was like, I don't even know what it is. The difference is between an ale and a lager. And so I learned, obviously it's the yeast, but it's, I had absolutely no experience whatsoever in brewing beer, and very, very, very little experience with beer in general. I mean, I was a beer drinker, but also like wine too. So it's not like beer is kind of more of like the vehicle that we chose to work in the way that we work. And the beer industry is extremely corrupt. So we thought that there would also be an industry that, if we could get our way of working to work in an industry that is known, it's an oligopoly, it's a worldly accepted oligopoly, and there's no motivation whatsoever to change that. If we could get something so different working in a market that's so corrupt, that maybe that would have more impact, more positive impact. So lessons out, we'll see. We'll see if it works or not.
Yeah, there's definitely things that we could talk offline as well, because my kind of uncle, worked for South African breweries, so he's got a story or two to tell. But anyway, we'll save that for another day. So also there is a big brewery that started in Scotland. I forget what the name is now, but anyway, two brothers.
BrewDog.
Yeah, that's it, BrewDog.
Yeah,
and they kind of gone everywhere now. Yeah, I've heard some stories about that as well. But anyway, again, these are offline conversations. So, but you said you like the kind of the American look and feel as well. So I mean, the IPAs are the beers and the labeling. So you mentioned, I mean, do you have a designer, or you do that yourself, or who's kind of the branding person?
So my wife does all the branding, but the design, we have a graphist that does the design and all of the hard bits. Corinne, hard. You could debate which is really hard, but Corinne is my wife is the one that kind of provokes the ideas and gets them out in the air, and then our graphist, she's the one that puts them on the labels.
So you do the labeling as well? I mean, when you said bottling is also labeling.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah. Labeling as well. Labeling, printing, dates, and all that. We do it all, capping, all of it. It's all done with the machine.
So when you think about, I'm just going to make some beer, there's a lot to it. I mean, bottling, labeling, the design. Then, so now you've got the beer. What about clients? I mean, who are your typical clients for this?
We work a lot with like small stores that sell local products. We have a lot, I'd say, in the number of customers, that's probably our biggest market, we'll say. Maybe not the biggest sales from the sales point of view, but definitely from the number of customers. And we think that's important, because these small spice épicerie, these small stores, that I just love to see them everywhere, and I think that they have a lot to contribute to the local economy. There was a study that was actually done that says money spent in a local economy is twice. So if you live in a local area, you consume locally, the money you spend in that environment is 2 times more efficient for the local economy than if you bought it from a store that's a chain. And so all of these little local stores that you go to, and they pay with cash because they don't like to owe money to anybody, and they support us and we support them. And then the people that go and buy things in their stores are just proud to be able to contribute as well. So I think those are as far as our customers, that I'd say adhere the most to our way of working, that would be that type of clientele. But we definitely have some big restaurants that do a lot of beer in kegs. We do some events. We make beer for the boats on the 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪. There's a CGN. They do a catering, so we make a couple of beers for them. We have friends that have summer pop-up bars, and we make a beer for them. So there's a lot of other stuff that we do throughout the year, and big events as well in the winter.
So besides that, you also, I noticed on the website that you have a food truck.
Yeah.
So is
the
that
food
something
truck,
quite new?
It's a year old, and what we learned is we tried to make it work full time, and basically the way we're set up, it doesn't work. It's more of a punctual type of thing, so we're going to do it more on an event based. So it's a food truck. It's on wheels. That should have given it all away. It's saying that, you know, it needs to be mobile and it needs to be punctual. It can't be something fixed and open all the time. So we're adapting that, our way of working with that. For now, it's shut down until, we'll say further notice, until the winter season hits. And at the moment, yeah, we're not putting much energy into that, because we found that maybe it did take a little bit away from our focus on the beer. In the tap room is half of what we sell at the tap room is boxes and bottles to take away. You know, so people will come and have a beer, but it's not a bar like the other bars in the village. Yeah. It's like a wine cave where you go and you can taste the beers, and then you go home with what you want. Okay. And so,
but this is open to anybody. I mean, all the time, or certain days in the week.
During the week when we're there, it's open. Well, I mean, we're there every day, so it's open every day during the week. And then there's someone to run the bar, to work at the bar, starting at 4 o'clock every day, 4 till 8 or 9. It depends on the season, you know. Summer and winter, we extend the hours a bit, depending on the number of people that are around. And if there are a handful of people at the bar and it's 9:30, we'll stay open until they're ready to go home, because that's what we're there for. But it's open every day. Yeah.
I was just thinking. Yes, sorry. I was just thinking about the food truck. You could have it at the end of a ski slope, so when people are finished, then the food truck is there.
Yeah, and that's one thing I think that we're in our village. There's something very particular. Is 80% of the people who come here are here. They own property here, so they're here on the weekends, and they come from 1 to 2 hours drive. So they come with the food that's in their fridge, because they cooked on Thursday night and they want to bring. They don't want to just let it spoil. So, and they have their own apartment here, so they eat quite often at home. So 80, and that's 80% of the people that are here. So restaurants really struggle in the village, and there aren't very many. So that will change, but for the moment, I think, the food truck, we're definitely going to focus more on punctual type events at the brewery, and maybe elsewhere. But for the moment, that's the way it is.
So now you started kind of husband and wife the business. Excuse me. So now, how many people you employ? Other people as part of the business?
Yeah, so we're at the moment, there are 8 of us. There are 8 of us. So you don't have a dog as well? Yeah, we have a dog. Yeah.
So the dog could be the 9th, could it?
Technically, yeah, but actually, how do you count a dog? Because he doesn't do the work, but he has 4 legs. So I don't know if you could count him as like 2 people or half.
I just see lots of startups, people always have a dog in there as well. So
yeah, he's our peacemaker, because everybody that has animals, they know that if you ever need love, they're there to give it to you. So absolutely, so he's been good for us, because everybody, we talk about startups and all that, and entrepreneurs and all that. There are good days, of course, but there are a lot of bad days. And in the bad days, you need to learn how to manage those. So the dog is a big help.
Excellent.
He helps
No,
us a lot.
definitely. I mean, like any business, it's not always plain sailing.
Yeah. And
And it's
and
the rough times as well.
yeah. And with since 2019, COVID and all that, the brewery started. So we built the second brewery, the one you see in all the pictures, in August. We started brewing in August 2017.
In the same location.
We changed locations as well. It's about the first location was an abandoned swimming pool in an old hotel transformed into apartments. And the owners of the apartments didn't want a pool. So the pool was unused for over 20 years. And we put our brewery in there to get started. And it's no longer in the brewery, or in the pool, but we moved everything. We built the whole new brewery, a whole new system and all that in 2017 in another area, which was garage. So it's kind of keeping with the American style. So any Americans that are listening to this, we all know that if we don't ourselves, we definitely have a friend that has a refrigerator and a couch in their garage, and that's where they drink beer. So that's we make beer in a garage. It's a glorified garage, so it's a big one that used to be for the snow removal equipment, and we transformed it now into a food grade factory making beer, and that's where we are today. So
was it easy starting this type of business in the mountains in Switzerland? I mean, for bureaucracy and for, I mean, buying kind of all the ingredients. I mean, the location being up there, the putting all the equipment in, and to distribute it all from kind of there as well. I mean, it must be full of challenges.
Yeah, so there are definitely easier ways to start a brewery. We chose Morgins. We've been coming here since I've been in Switzerland. We've been coming here. We had an apartment on weekends, and so we were here every weekend before our son was born. So the village, the area is something that we appreciate.
Sorry, I forgot to ask, how old is your son now?
He's 11 years old.
Well,
he'll be 12 in March. Yeah.
So he helps out as well?
I'm not allowed to tell you that if we're recording, because I can't make children. I'm not allowed to support child labor.
Right.
but he helps very little because he's 11 years old, and we try to separate work from life, even though that's really hard. But he does help us from time to time. But our preference is to keep things as separate as possible until he's a little bit older, where he can choose what he wants to do. But yeah, so that's the fact that we're in Morgins complicates a lot of things logistically, especially in winter when there's snow. But we still believe, and we believed when we started, that the best thing we could possibly do to have more impact is to create something different and complementary to the area, in the area, not next to it, and then try and bring beer in. But so we create jobs in our village. We're probably, no, I couldn't say it, one of the biggest employers in our village year round. I mean, there are some restaurants that have 20 employees, but for 4 months out of the year.
Yeah.
And we believe that, having a brewery is something different that gets people to come here. So it increases tourism, and we have proof of that too. So our choice to be here was not for facilitating logistical choices. It was for the lifestyle, for the environment, to say, well, you could go ski all day long, and then after skiing, you can go into a brewery that's walking distance from the lift, but it's a long walk. But and you can have a beer that's locally brewed locally, and you'll see the brewer walking behind the bar to get a drink of water. And so that's the choice. We made a choice to do everything that we do in as transparent as possible. So you could come and see, and sometimes even in the winter, people walk into the brewery with a beer in their hand when we're brewing. And I wouldn't say we encourage that, but we don't throw them out either. We say hello at least. But I think that's important to be able to go and physically see the activity, and you can attach more to it, and it becomes more of a local. It becomes more part of the local way of working.
Yeah, I love that. So the people employed, I guess, I mean, they're all locals then.
So yeah, we have two special cases where we started an apprenticeship program.
Mm-hmm.
We talked before the recording a bit about sustainability, and my belief on sustainability is much more than just reducing carbon emissions.
Mm-hmm.
It's also creating the competencies and the capabilities in the people to sustain it. And I'm old and tired and used and falling apart, and brewing for me is becoming something that I can do from time to time, but I can't do it every day anymore. And so we created an apprenticeship program, and I became a trainer for apprentices, and we're the only trainer in Valais, in our canton, for brewers. And we have a brewer that started, and he lives in 45 minutes from here.
Excellent.
So
I love it.
That's the exception. The rest of them, so Châtel, again, France is 3-minute drive from the brewery. So Remy, 2 of them live in France, and 2 of them live in Morgins. And then Corinne and I, we live in Morgins as well. So
now, I mean, I love the story. I love what you've created, and I mean, a passion has built up into something. I mean, a business, but then also looking at kind of the other parts that you can add to it, the apprenticeship, the food truck, the special beers that you do, giving back to the community, creating tourism. I mean, it's probably gone beyond your initial thoughts of just making some beer.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of where you are now. So where do you want to take the business to? And kind of what is, if there is anything, what's holding you back from doing that?
So last year we brewed 100 and almost 140,000 liters.
Wow.
And that was COVID. I mean, yeah, again, there's just so many things, so many variables, so many things, unknowns that were known 3 years ago. But we have capacity to get up to 200,000 liters. So in terms of volume, that's kind of our target. And to get to that volume, we can manage all of the work between the 8 of us, 8 or 9. And so that in terms of volume, that's kind of our objective, is not to go beyond that. And then we also want to focus more on, again, like you said in the beginning about the community. We're really proud of our community. We worked really hard to convince them to stay tuned, and they do a great job of keeping in contact. So we want to work even harder to make sure that we're listening to them, and we want to get them involved more in some of the decisions that we have to make, which that'll be coming along in next year as well. So the future, in terms of volume, that's what it is. And then, so once you get to that, so what? It's not like you get there and then all of a sudden things turn all by themselves, and you just it becomes repetitive work, and it's a constant effort to maintain that. But having said that, since there's not always this infinite growth theory, what do we do with the time left over? We'll become, over time, we'll get more and more organized and more efficient, and we'll free up an hour here, an hour there. And then, so what do we do with that? And our decision is to use all that spare, well, hopefully spare energy to advance our way of working. So reducing our impact on the planet, that's definitely a top priority. Also, improving our impact on our community, our employees, our colleagues, the people who work at the brewery, and also our community. So our neighbors and everyone around us, and the people who follow us, the people who like us. I think that's for us, those are the, we're going to shift one day into selling more, from selling more to selling better, maybe. That might be a way to say it, is giving more attention to our customers, which I think that's, again, sustainability is not just the carbon footprint, it's so many other things, and so we need to cultivate that and make sure that gets better, and we do better and better with that.
So it's been a beautiful story, and I've loved it. There's so much more I'd like to ask you and get involved with, and I definitely would like to bring the family up and have a look as well, since we're not too far away, and encourage other people to join you on this journey. So it has been a great privilege and a pleasure to have you as our 100th guest. And is there anything that you'd like to kind of leave us with? I mean, I will provide kind of contact, your details, the website, your LinkedIn profile, that people can reach out and contact, and provide whatever that you want me to share as well. But is there, if anyone else was kind of venturing out on a journey, or we're thinking about entrepreneurialism, or thinking about life in general, from all the stories that you've shared, even kind of the one with the kind of guiding people down a mountain in a thunderstorm, all of this is a part of human development as well. And that is a massive learning curve that we all go through on our life journey. So do you have any message that you'd like to leave the audience with?
Yeah, I think so. We talked a lot about the brewery and beer and all that, but the why, my personal purpose is basically to contribute to the elimination of shareholder primacy. That's my personal purpose. So we created a brewery that goes against the traditional ways of working, to hopefully show that it's possible, convince ourselves also, but to show that it's possible. And I was recently in a discussion where we're talking about sustainability in the planet and reducing our impact on the planet and all that. And, I keep coming back to a discussion I heard one time where somebody said, well, the planet's doing just fine. The planet's not going to die. It's just, we're going to be the ones. They won't be able to live on this planet anymore. The planet's going to be just fine. So having said that, we can contribute to improving our impact on the planet. And it's not just reducing the carbon footprint. It's stopping the support of big companies that exploit, I'm exaggerating, maybe slightly, maybe not, exploit their employees for profit, and support the companies that use their profit to make their employees happier and smarter. And everybody can do that every day of the week, just with a fair amount of research and some effort in purchasing decisions. So supporting the companies that work in a way that's sustainable, that for the future, so going against the traditional way of working, we can't change it without stopping the support of it. and entrepreneurs as well. If you want to go out and start your company, I mean, go do it, and go fast, and be ready to have a lot of sleepless nights, and don't get sucked in to the theory that you need to create a company that fits in with the existing top-down management shareholder first model. That model is dying. It's dying before our eyes. And if you create a company that's going to work that way, I think you can be pretty sure what the result will be. So you need to be brave and work and create a company that works in a different way, in a sustainable way, and you'll have more chance to more possibilities in the future to survive. Because I think it's going to get really messy really soon, personally, to be negative at the end.
That is absolutely beautiful, and I concur with everything that you said. I've never liked working for the big corporate companies. Maybe I liked the salary at the time, but if I reflect back on it, yeah, it was always about pushing you to actually bring in more money for the shareholders, and it wasn't about the customers. It wasn't about the enjoyment. It was about the money that the shareholders needed at the end of each quarter. So giving back, creating a business is kind of a family-run business. You're giving back to society. You're very conscious about your footprint that you're leaving. You're also about the legacy that you're leaving. I mean, to do something like this, you've not just created an attraction for tourism and helping the economy where you are, you're getting people to buy into that and to create the community that they can all foster new relationships and benefit from. And I want to help achieve that as well. I think kind of going back to the old school way where we had the high street and not the big supermarkets, and you got to know the people personally. You got to know when they went well, when they were on holiday, and the ingredients of when they make the bread or whatever it may be. And it was that these personal communities that we liked. We liked going to meet these people. We liked the conversations. And now technology is trying to remove that and make it all automated, that you don't actually have to speak to anybody. And we're removing what makes us human. And I absolutely love what you're doing. Anyway, we could, as I say, we could talk all day about this. So Robby Collins, you've been an absolutely fantastic guest. I love your story. I want to know more. I'm definitely going to come and visit you. And I encourage particularly the audience and the previous guests that we've had in Switzerland, it's not too far away for them to come and visit either, and to come out and see and start networking. So as again, thank you very much. And it's been a great privilege that you're our 100th guest. And it's been an absolute pleasure having you.
Thanks for the invite, and proud to be the 100th, and I'll be on for the 101st, but in listening mode with good questions.
Excellent. So if you haven't already, and I know I've got your LinkedIn profile, I can see your website, but if there's anything else you want to share, then just drop me a note and I'll put those in so people can check you out, connect with you, take a trip and visit you as well. Okay. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Have a great weekend. And as soon as I kind of edited this with a 𝗘𝗔𝗐𝗏, then I'll send you a copy of that as well that you can share.
Great. Perfect.
Okay. Thanks, Robby. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Take care. Cheers.
You're welcome. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow, that was another featured business brought to you by Visibility Impact. If you'd like to be our next featured guest or learn how James Moffat can help you leverage on the art and power of interactive storytelling for your business, reach out and schedule a call now.